we can't really discuss security in mid-2011 and not talk about Sony a bit. And also bring into that kind of attitudes to security from the audience. I mean, you're implying that the younger generation, if content's not made available to them in a way that they see fit and at a fair price, then they will always find a way to get hold of it, which was sort of the music industry experience. And also the attitudes of some of the people that are trying to challenge security. I mean, with Sony, it wasn't that people, as I understand it, wasn't that people were trying to steal content, which would be the problem for traditional pay TV providers. It was that almost an ideologically motivated bunch of hackers stole, disrupted actual transactional information and stole private data. I mean, is that something, does that even come within your remit, or is that a completely different set of security providers that deal with the transactional side of pay TV and pay-per-view and download to own and all the different transactions that will come about?
I think it's a different set of security. I mean, it's traditional server-side security. There's been mechanisms in place for protecting bank transactions and identifying users. Making sure your servers are patched properly, you got the right DMZs and firewalls, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's one of the challenges there, which could be addressed through other technology. I mean, certainly we provide some of the identification capabilities. With Nagravision, we supply smart cards to banking industry for ID mechanisms, all sorts. So there could be some overlap. Right now, it's still username and password, and people have been trying to find a better solution for a long time. I think it'll stick around for a while, but I think in the future there's a greater role on the identification of users, certainly.
But can there be client-side weaknesses that lend vulnerability to the server side?
Yeah, absolutely. But the attacks that Sony faced were really independent. I mean, there was a link to the client because it was a retaliation due to sequence of events that had happened on the PlayStation side. But it was really
to do with the way they were choosing to market.
No, there had been some attacks on the client on the PlayStation. I mean, they'd done very well considering the size of their network and considering their devices, but there was an exploit, and then they pursued legal action against certain people on the client, and then that had a community backlash, which resulted in an attack against the server. So really independent of.
So this is where you now start to deal with mass psychology as a means of attack.
But psychology of a very particular group of people, I think, because.
But the ones you've got to worry about.
Yes, but what I want to argue is that it's the games community is going to be a different mentality and psychology than the video community. But I think that Trygve pointed out a very important factor that's taking place. We used to look at pirates in the video industry as the enemy who was trying to get away with getting things for free at no cost. So there's been a shift to whereas those people still might exist and there's still a lot of commercial enterprise going on behind hacking, that there's now a much larger community of video consumers, like perhaps your children, I don't know, who are looking to create not a free experience necessarily, because they might pay for it if it existed, but rather a flexible experience. That's not available to them through an existing service provider. So as we sit around this table and talk about security and all of the details of that, the reality is that there's a huge and swelling base of consumers out there who are looking for a more flexible experience of content than what it is that we and our customers are unfortunately in most cases providing them today. So we need to, I think, get on the ball and start providing a much more flexible, interactive, personal, portable, and social experience to customers, in which case they'll pay for it, I strongly believe. And you stated earlier that you thought that Hulu commercially was perhaps not as successful as they hoped to be. I think they have one of the largest video advertising-based incomes now in the industry.
Successful on that side. Yeah.
And they're about to hit the 1 million consumer subscriber mark for their Hulu Plus service, paying something like $7.99 US a month. For mostly the same content, but the only value proposition above and beyond the free service is multi-device consumption, deep catalog, and some content in HD. So that there's 1 million people willing to pay for that extra value of a multi-screen experience really is a lesson that the industry as a whole needs to learn.
But I think this is not only a technical problem that we have to solve, because taking several years back, like 5 years back, DRM was blamed for being for limiting free content transfer from one device to another. Okay, it was sort of common perception against this technology. I think we've done a very big step forward, all of us, okay, to provide free content transfer between all the devices that are authorized to be a part of your domain, and still there's no free flow. And I think that the problem goes back to the content agreements and the content distribution rights that our customers have today, and the DRM is no longer far away from being limiting a content transfer from one device to another, while the legal side is still very far away from giving that sort of experience, and therefore this immediate availability of content on many devices will still be a problem regardless of what we do here as security providers. And I think that if our operators want to make the step, they really value that problem that you've mentioned, I think they should go back to their content agreements and try to achieve better rights for content distribution.
Absolutely.
But I think some of those challenges too are related to what I always called iPod distribution. So it was really taking the content into the home and trying to distribute for devices within the home. And I don't know if you've seen or you saw Jobs' keynote at the developer conference, but I mean, with iCloud, he's saying, they saw the PC as the hub and now they've demoted it and really the cloud is your hub. And I think that changes a lot of the security challenges. So once you're doing over the top to distribute to multi-devices, it's easier. Well, I mean, it's easier at least from a consumer standpoint. We have to do all the difficult things in the back end, but it's easier to target different devices with the right content and the right security from the cloud. So I see a change happening there with a move to more cloud over the top, where we can actually overcome or essentially get around the problems of DRM interoperability, because I mean, it hasn't worked. I mean, DRM interoperability, I've been working on DRM for 15 years and I should have chosen something else probably. But it just hasn't worked, which is, I think, one of the challenges with ultraviolet as well, is that we haven't really seen that interoperability.
It's better having this enormous store of DRM in the cloud,
Right.
which knows which one it's delivering to which device at which time.
Right, yeah, and who runs that store is maybe what we're arguing about or what we're fighting over.
And it will include micropay. I mean, this is obviously a difficult subject for linear pay TV providers, but of course one of the interesting things, somebody who does have teenagers, is that they want all this stuff and they want to download it in different ways and look at it in different ways, but they're certainly not the people who are going to pay for it. And yet they might, on a kind of pay-as-you-go. I mean, if I could, not downgrade my Sky subscription necessarily, but they're unlikely to go on providing every single aspect of any time for any piece of content in any format for free. And at the moment they stop, I'd rather say, well, you can't have it, or you can buy a Sky-as-you-go card and pay for it yourself. Because I don't use it, I have almost no interest in seeing anything that I could possibly see on Sky outside of a 42-inch HD.
Is your thesis that people will not buy, there will not be microtransactions for video?
Well, that's
In
what
the
I'm
same
asking.
way.
That's what I'm asking. Will there be?
Let's go
Because
down the kids'
there's
roads.
been a resistance to that.
Yeah, so it appears we all have kids. So I have kids, so two teenagers, and they both uniformly buy music legitimately. I would say that wouldn't I, but that's true. They buy it from iTunes. They do not buy video. They consume video, they don't own video. And for me, I still think this is largely about, the post-Napster come iTunes phenomenon, where, somebody talked about flexibility and the ability to, gain access to and transact with and kind of engage with audio content, music, very easily. And I think that's what iTunes has given them. And we know there are other services that wrap themselves around that kind of concept. But so for me, that says if you can do it with audio, you should be able to do something similar with video. Because I do think, I believe in the inherent goodness of mankind. Stupid of me, maybe, but I do think people.
You're in the wrong business, Andy.
No, I don't. But I do fundamentally believe that people, if they are given a reasonably priced, flexible, easily doable kind of media consumption mechanism, they do that. And
Well, iTunes was that game changer, wasn't it?
Well, it changed it for audio, but I think we still have not reached that point in video.
I think there are a few services that offer that. I mean, on the audio side, I would not argue that iTunes is your most economical recourse for buying music, but Spotify certainly is in many ways.
But the business model motivation to not do it is exactly the same in television as it was in the music industry. They wanted to sell us LPs where we only wanted 3 tracks out of the 15 we were sold, but they made lots of money on the jewel case and all the rest of it. And in paid television, they want me to subscribe to Sky Sports. They don't want me to have the option to buy a few games, or my children to buy a few music videos.
I think that's going to have to change, Nick, because we've been doing a lot of primary consumer research recently, and it shows that there are very much 4 different distinct types of media consumers out there today. And I won't go into great detail on them. You can check our blog for more detail. But it essentially indicates that you have to start meeting consumers where they are today. And some of them are like me, who demand everything on demand, complete flexibility of device. Want to be able to watch it on here, on my 55-inch TV, wherever. But there are others who don't want to make any long-term commitment, like perhaps yourself, to video, but want something on demand and perhaps on a micropay basis. So I think to meet consumers where they are, you have to start offering them those various different kinds of models. And I think the good news is all of our technology supports that kind of model potentially. We just have to find the content providers who are willing to really invest the time in understanding consumers and trying to leverage all of those different consumer types.
No, I think that specific aspect is between the content providers and their consumers. I mean, we are here to assist, we're here to provide technology. As you said, we have the technology, and if they want to go from subscription-based model to a pay-per-view or a pay-as-you-go sort of based model, they can do this using whatever technology they have in place already. But on the other hand, I believe that they cannot build such a big business by waiting for somebody wanting to buy a specific event, and maybe he won't do it today and they're going to lose their money. So I believe subscription-based sort of service is going to remain, and I think that attractiveness of this sort of on-demand or impulsive experience will come from the extension of your basic subscription, probably with very small a payment that will allow you to have Sky or DirecTV or whatever subscription that you already have extended to be available anywhere you want, at any time you want, on these more attractive or more available devices.